begin by praying that the fruit of our learning should help to bring home the hostages and protect our soldiers and Yisrael and all of the innocents and bring a speedy end to our conflicts.
Amen.
So last week we were looking at the Rambam in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah. I said we'll do this chapter. We're not going to do every single halacha. I wanted to do the ones that more specifically relate to the sugya that we were looking at. Oh, and here's Paul. But I think it's worth going back. We'll read the beginning again. We'll read from the beginning, and then we'll go. 1 second. Oh, Michael is trying to connect.
Oh, okay, good.
All right. So he said he's having some trouble, but so we'll just go ahead and start. So I didn't prepare these sheets. We're just going to use the Rambam here in Al HaTorah. Hello, Paul. Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. You hear me?
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
so let's
I
go
wasn't
back.
sure there was class because of Hanukkah. I didn't remember.
Right, no, and I didn't remember that it was Hanukkah, but I think I usually do class on Hanukkah.
Okay. Yeah, for you it's not yet Hanukkah.
For me, it's just Erev Hanukkah, but for you, it's Hanukkah. Actually, I got a message and a picture today from friends of mine who were in Kuala Lumpur, where, it was Hanukkah hours and hours ago.
Half a day.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so here, let's begin. Let's read. So Michael, okay. Michael Werner has now joined us, so we'll wait for another second. And while he's joining us, there we go. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Okay.
So most of my interventions I'm going to need to do by chat.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll try to pay attention to the chat just to make sure if I'm not missing any important messages from you. Okay, Michael Schwartz, you're going to start to read. We read the first couple of halachot last time. This is Rambam in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, Perek Hamishi, where he discusses the mitzvot of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. And this is where he discusses this issue of Yahareg v'al Yavor or Yaharog v'Yavor ba'al Yahareg, depending on the circumstances of the mitzvah involved. And I wanted to look at that before we continue in the sugya in back in Yoma. And as I say, this is just to see how the Rambam summarizes that, because it's a much longer topic than what we're going to address in this particular class. So, Michael Schwartz, you'll begin reading Perek Hamishi, Kol Beit Yisrael.
Kol Beit Yisrael mitzavim al kiddush Hashem hagadol hazeh, shene'amar nikdashti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, umazharin shelo lechalalu, shene'amar v'lo tichalalu et Shem kadshi, ketzad b'sha'ah she'ya'amod goy v'yahanus et Yisrael lavor al achad mikol.
Yeah, wait, there's something wrong with my screen and it's not advancing. Hold on. Wait. Oh, gosh. I apologize. Hang on 1 minute. I think I'm going to have to do this in a different browser. There's something wrong here. Oy, oy, oy. Let's see if this is better. Okay, let me share this screen. Probably looks like the last screen, but it's a different browser. Okay, you know what? It's fine. Before you go on, let's just translate the beginning. Kol Beit Yisrael. So what did you read?
So all of Beit Yisrael are commanded on sanctifying this great name, as it's written, and I will sanctify you among Bnei Israel, among.
Not all sanctify
I
you,
will be I will
Nikdashti.
be
Oh,
sanctified.
I will be, yeah, I will be sanctified among Bnei Israel, and they are
Mhm.
warned not to desecrate, as it's written. You shall not desecrate it, Shem Kachi, the holy name.
My holy name.
My
Yeah,
holy.
my holy name. So now, Ketzad.
Ketzad b'sha'ashe ya'amod goy v'ya'anus et Yisrael la'avor el echad mekol mitzvot ha'amorot b'Torah or yeharganu ya'avor below yehareg she'na b'mitzvot asher yaseh otam ha'adam v'chai behem below she'yamut behem v'im met below avar harei zeh mitchayev b'nafsho. So
Okay.
how to do
So what
these
does all of that mean?
so how to sanctify or not desecrate in the moment, the time that you stand, that a goy non-Jew stands and oppresses or forces a Yisrael to
Forces.
forces Yisrael to the to
Transgress,
hmm?
transgress.
Transgress.
Okay, transgress on one of the mitzvot that are written in the Torah, or that he will be put them to death. You should have transgressed the mitzvah and not be killed, as it's written. As the mitzvah is written, that you should do that. A man should do them and should live in them, and lo, die in them. And if he dies and he doesn't transgress the mitzvah, then he'd be obligated in his soul.
Okay. So so the Rambam here introduces three psukim, right? So the first pasuk is Nikdashti b'toch b'nei Israel. I will be sanctified among the children of Israel. The second is Lo techalu et shem kodshi. You shall not make chol, right? You should not violate, or there's another word that just escaped me, but okay. You shouldn't be machal my holy name. And then we have a third pasuk, v'chai bahem. So again, I want to emphasize the Rambam isn't picking these out lightly. These are based on psukim that Chazal darshan. The Rambam is summarizing the way he understands sugyot, primarily in Masechet Sanhedrin. But what he's pointing out here is because of this pasuk of B'chai Bahem, you should live by them, referring to the mitzvot, that a person should do mitzvot and live by them. That has its own overriding force. That is, by default, you're not supposed to risk your life or sacrifice your life in order to do a mitzvah because of this pasuk of v'chai bahem. And so therefore, in the first case that he brings, and we'll be careful here about the language that he uses. It says it's a non-Jew. He's forcing a Jew to transgress any one of the mitzvot in the Torah, or to be killed. Then what's the mitzvah? What are you supposed to do?
Transgress and not be
You're
killed.
supposed to transgress and not be killed, because that's a kiyum of v'chai bahem, right? That's the way you fulfill v'chai bahem, meaning even if your life is, or when your life is at stake, it's better to hold on to your life and to transgress the mitzvah. So that's the
But if he forces you to do avodah zarah, then you are not
so
allowed to
we're
transgress
not
it.
there yet. We're not there yet.
Okay.
We're not there
Okay,
yet.
but there are two
okay,
things.
so this is
To transgress the mitzvot
okay. So but
and to do avodah zarah is something. It's much.
well, so okay. So now you can go ahead and read. Paul, you can go ahead and read bet. Halacha bet. B'med dvarim amurim.
במה דברים אמורים? בזמן שהגוי מתכוון להנאת
רגע.
עצמו. לא, זה
לא,
לא שם?
לא, למעלה, לא, רגע, לא, פה.
כן,
במה
כן,
דברים
סליחה,
אמורים?
סליחה. אוקיי.
Okay.
זה בית there, עשינו. במה דברים אמורים? בשאר מצוות חוץ מעבודה זרה וגילוי עריות ושפיכות דמים, אבל 3 עבירות אלה, אם יאמר לו עבור על אחד מהם, או תהרג, יהרג ואל יעבור. אוקיי.
Okay. So you can translate this, explain this for us.
Yes. What does that mean? For all the other mitzvot, which are not avodah zarah, גילוי עריות, שפיכות דמים, אבל, what is אבל here?
Yeah, well.
But for those 3 transgressions, he tells you that you should transgress them, one of them, or you should be killed, יהרג ואל יעבור.
Right. In other words, avor al chat mehen o tehareg. He says to you, transgress one of these mitzvot.
If he tells you all that you should transgress one of the 3 last averot, which we yes. But if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you, something like that. Then you should die and not transgress.
Right. You should
be killed.
You should be killed.
You should accept to be killed and not transgress.
Okay. So then now he continues and says, so let's see. We have the tashtit, like the basic foundation of this is that first we have a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, we have mitzvah of not being mechalel Shem Hashem, and we have the concept of v'chai bahem. So v'chai bahem tells me that regardless of the mitzvah in general, it's better if you have a choice between violating a mitzvah or dying, it's better to violate the mitzvah. Now we have the most basic exceptions. The most basic exception to that is going to be these 3 mitzvot: avodah zarah, gilui arayot, v'shfichut damim. And in those 3 instances, if a goy forces you to transgress, is trying to force you to transgress any one of these 3 mitzvot, or to be killed,
not to transgress. These are not mitzvot. These are things which are forbidden. There is a mitzvah which says that it's forbidden.
All of these are
Okay,
mitzvot.
okay,
Actually,
okay.
avodah zarah is not a single
They
mitzvah.
are negative mitzvot.
Right. So
Things you shouldn't do. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and also Gilui Arayot isn't a single mitzvah, but they encompass a number of mitzvot. But so if the goy tells you that he's trying to force you to transgress any one of these three mitzvot, or to be killed, so you're supposed to be killed. You're supposed to allow yourself to be killed. But now there's an exception to that. Bamed dvarim amurim.
בזמן שהגוי מתכוון להנאת עצמו, כגון שאנסו לבנות לו ביתו בשבת,
Sha'anaso. כגון שאנסו לבנות לו ביתו בשבת.
אנסו,
אנסו, הוא אנס את היהודי, הוא אנס אותו, אנסו.
אוקיי, לבנות לו ביתו בשבת או לבשל לו תבשילו, או אנס אישה לבעלה, לבעול אותה, כן?
Right.
וכיוצא בזה, אבל אם נתכוון להעבירו על המצוות בלבד, אם היה בינו לבין עצמו ואין שם 10 מישראל, יעבור ואל ייהרג, ואם אנסו להעבירו ב10 בישראל, ייהרג ואל יעבור, ואפילו לא נתכוון להעבירו, אלא על מצווה משאר מצוות בלבד.
Okay. So yes, so this complicates matters. So what is he saying? What is he saying here? Bamed dvarim amurim. When do we say these things?
Even in the case of the shalosh mitzvot, there is still an exception within those three mitzvot.
So actually, this is Bamed dvarim amurim goes back to the first set of instructions. When do we say that a person should be over and not yareg? When a person should transgress and not be killed? That's what he's referring back to. Bizman shagoy mitkaven ha'ana'at atzmo. So what does that mean?
When the goy is basically doing this for his own personal pleasure, as it were, his own personal enjoyment.
You don't have to add in as it were. It's right.
It's my nervous sort of hedging my bets. Yes.
Right. So don't hedge your bets. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. If you get it right, you get it right. Okay. So when do we say this? We say this when the non-Jew who's forcing you is doing it for his own pleasure. So the Rambam gives examples. Kigon shanaso livnot lo beito b'Shabbat. Right? He's forcing him to build his house on Shabbat. Right? Olavashelo tavshilo. Right? To cook for him, presumably also on Shabbat. Oh, anas isha leba'ala. He raped a woman. He was forcing a woman to be raped. Ukiyotze bazeh. Rivara, to be right in the have intercourse with her. So all of these he's doing in these instances where he's doing it just for his own personal pleasure. There's no theological imperative behind it. He's just doing it because he can and he wants to, he likes to. So then the first set of instructions that he gave in Halacha Aleph will obtain. They apply. So in all of these cases, what's the din? If you're the Jew and the goy is trying to make you do these things, transgress and don't die. And don't transgress and right, exactly. So in all of these cases, it's lavor velo le'areg. אבל אם נתכוון להעבירו על המצוות בלבד. What does that mean?
If he does, well, that's problematic. If his intention is to force you to transgress the mitzvot, just for the transgression, not for his own pleasure.
Yes, that's the bilvad, right?
Yes, but there's a problem with this because
We haven't
how do you
finished the
know
sentence.
what is his intention?
So wait, we'll address that. But let's say the intention
You
is
can't know
very.
it because it's in his head. It's in the
No,
very.
no, that's not true. Sometimes intentions are very explicit. In fact, Hanukkah is a good example, but we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. For the moment, let's just take it as it is. So if his intention is to make you transgress mitzvot, so then that breaks down into two possibilities. That in itself breaks down into two possibilities. So what are the two possibilities? אם היה בינו לבין עצמו, ואין שם 10 מישראל, יעבור ואל יהרג. So what does that mean?
There's no meaning. You can do the transgression, but
It's not you
there
can do
isn't.
it's not you can do this transgression, you must do the transgression.
You must do that. You must transgress. Yes.
Yes. Presumably you have to do it because remember, he said earlier, if you allow yourself to be killed and not transgress, right? If you allow v'imet v'lo avar, in the first instance, harei ze mitchayev b'nafsho. We didn't discuss that, but what does that mean, right? If in other words,
It's too late, no? L'itchayev b'nafsho. He's already
no,
dead.
there's a difference between saying chayav mita and mitchayev b'nafsho. So what does he mean mitchayev b'nafsho? Right, you're in the physical sense, the person is dead. So what's the nafkamina? What difference does it make now that he's
He
dead?
goes to heaven or to hell, no?
That it will presumably has something to do with divine, ultimately divine punishment.
Mhm.
Right? So in other words, if he's so it's the difference between dying innocent of a charge and dying guilty of a charge. And so here, according to the Rambam, in the case of in the case of Shar mitzvot, right? Not the three big Gilui Arot, Shvichut Damim, and Avodah Zarah. Not in this case. In all the other cases, if a person is ne'nas and he decides that that he's going to die rather than be over on the mitzvah, then according to the Rambam, if he dies, he's mitchayev b'nafsho, that he actually transgressed. He actually transgressed. This is a machloket amongst Rishonim, but this is how the Rambam holds. Rambam holds that, as we say, that you're mitchayev b'nafsho. So now we say, okay. So then we say the exception. So we have all of the mitzvot except for avodah zarah, shchut damim, avodah zarah. For those, the basic case is your yehareg v'al yavor. But then we come back to shar mitzvot. We say, when do we say that you're over and not allow yourself to be killed? That's when the goy had intended hana'at atzmo. But if he intended to make you do something specifically to be over on a mitzvah, then what? Im haya beino levein atzmo ve'ein sham 10 miYisrael. Ya'avor v'al yehareg. So even in the case where the goy is trying to make you transgress, not for his own pleasure, but dafka, he wants you to violate your Torah. He wants to violate the Torah. He wants to make sure you violate the Torah. If it's in private, and in private meaning, it is defined as being not in front of at least 10 men from Israel. Just not in front of a minyan of men in Israel. Then, even then, Yavor va'al Yahareg. So if he's captured you and placed you in a dungeon, unfortunately, we don't have to imagine too hard this happening, which is happening right now. And they say to be over on Shar Mitzvot, like to cook on Shabbat or to eat treif or mashalo yiyeh. So if it's between you and him and less than 10 men Yisrael, then you're supposed to transgress and not be killed. But what's the rest? If he forced him to transgress in front of a minion of Jews, then yehareg v'al ya'avor. V'afil lo nitkaven ha'aviro ela al mitzvah mishar mitzvot bilvad. Even if he didn't have intention to make him transgress, only on a mitzvah of other mitzvot alone. What does he mean by shar mitzvot? Other mitzvot.
Basically, other mitzvot aside from the three, as other mitzvot besides avodah zarah, arayot, the spilling of blood.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is laying out again. He's building up the whole scenario here. So Michael Werner, you can read V'chol hadvarim
But
ha'elu.
there is this thing with the 10 people. I'm thinking of Auschwitz. People had, of course, they had to eat treif. There was no the food they got was treif, and there were many people, and nevertheless they had to eat. They didn't eat. Maybe there were some of them wouldn't eat. I don't know.
Well, no. So listen, first of all, we're not here to judge people in Auschwitz, but a lot of questions come up. But there, in other words, there, if the Nazis gave them treif meat, which didn't happen in the concentration camps to the best of my knowledge, if they gave them something out and out treif, that would be I could say they're not doing it, they're not giving them that dafka to make them be over al mitzvot. They're doing that to, just because that's all the food that they're going to give them. And but if you were hauled out in front of everybody and said, "Here, eat this piece of pork, or I'm going to put you to death," then arguably you would have to allow yourself to be put to death. However, I'm not here again. I don't want to judge cases in Auschwitz. You may know there's a there's a set of tshuvot that were written post facto about Holocaust issues, things that happened in real time. I have a downloaded copy of it. It's quite big. It's 4 volumes. And now it's escaping me the person who wrote it and the name of the tshuvot. It'll come to me later. I have it on my computer. These were things that they were asked to a posek. They were real questions that were asked to a posek even before the camps. There were questions that started from the time of the Nazi occupation in Poland, and in the ghetto. I don't remember which ghetto he was in. There are all kinds of questions. They're questions that no one should ever have to think of. I remember, one of them was where one of them was they asked him a shaila that if he was given the opportunity, this one person was given the opportunity to work in a kitchen for the Nazis, which would mean he'd have to work 7 days a week, including on Shabbat. But he would have a much better chance of survival because working in the kitchen, he would be allowed to eat more than a regular ration of food. And he was asked about. There are many, many questions, and that's not even as terrible as some of the other shilas you can imagine. So, what I will say, rather than trying to paskin shilas from a few halachas in the Rambam, let's just continue so we understand that this is part of the tashtit, right? This is part of the foundation that a posek will take into consideration when answering a question like that. So who are we up to now? Michael Werner v'chol advarim ha'elu. Michael, you're muted.
And I was just rattling off the whole phrase.
Continue.
בכל הדברים האלו שלא בשעה השמד, אבל בשעה השמד, והוא כשיעמוד מלך רשע כנבוכדנצר, והביריו ויגון ויגזור שמד על ישראל לבטל דתם או במצווה מן המצוות, יהרג ואל יעבור אפילו על אחד משאר המצוות, בין נאנס בתוך עשרה בין נאנס בינו לבין גויים.
Okay, so go ahead, explain this.
So all of these things, presumably all the above judgments, or all that are not at the moment of destruction.
No, so what's you're right that the word comes from the word it's the same root as lahashmid, which means to destroy. But the word shmad has a specific meaning.
So it'd be like basically when
wait, you don't know, right? You're trying to figure it out. That's fine. But Paul, can you explain what shmad is?
No, I can't translate it because shmad is shmad, and it's when there is a king or a government which wants to force the Jews to transgress all their religion.
Very good. Basically, yeah. In other words, the shmad.
The whole religion, yes.
Let's see how they have a translation here. They just say the time of a decree. But shmad is specifically what Paul is talking about, that at a time when there's a non-Jewish power that has power over the Jews, and their decree is for the Jews to transgress the Torah. That's shmad, right? So, for example, Jews who were forcibly converted under the Inquisition. The Inquisition was the shmad, for example, right? During the time of the Maccabim, so it was the Hellenistic government was the shmad, right? So they created the shmad. They created a decree to force Jews to transgress their Torah. So
just speaking as a historian, the forcible conversions under Spain were done by other agencies rather than the Inquisition. The Inquisition only applied after they had converted. But that's sort of just small.
Speaking as a person who also knows something about that, the punishment that was meted out to Jews was only meted out to Jews as such after they converted. But the Inquisition, and that's part of what you're saying, but the Inquisition as a force was a force of the Catholic, under the aegis of the Pope and the Catholic Church, that said that Jews and Muslims had to either had to convert, or at the time, let's say in 1492, or leave the country.
To leave.
Right?
Right. But once again, it was. I mean, I'm not trying to whitewash the Inquisition. I mean, the actual agencies that were applying force to Jews prior to conversion was not the Inquisition. It was the monarchy, and it was certain other orders within the Catholic Church, mainly Franciscan, and then the Dominicans, who actually controlled the Inquisition, were actually opposed to forcible conversion, but they were quite willing to to apply force to Jews, to make sure that they were actually not practicing in secret after they had converted. That's the only point. But that's
okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it at that. I think I would also modify a little bit what you're saying, but I'm not necessarily in a position. But based on my understanding and I have read somewhat a lot about this. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But yes, thank you for the tikkun. In any event, at the time of a shmad, right? So all of these things, so as you were saying, all of these things, meaning all the prior statements that have been said so far in this parak, they apply shelo b'shat hashmad. Of a b'shat hashmad, and then the Rambam explains what shmad is. So Michael, we're going to continue. Who?
And that is when there is a wicked king like Nebuchadnezzar, and his ilk.
Well, the Chaverav, literally, right? His friends, those who are with him.
His confederates, his
confederates,
his henchmen, his heavies, and he decrees, and a decree of shmad, a decree of destruction upon Yisrael to.
Wait. The Exor shmad al Yisrael. He decrees
destruction.
No, again, shmad. You're translating it as if it's hashmada,
right?
But it's shmad. So shmad. His decree is a decree of shmad. It's a decree of forcing Jews to cancel their religion. It's not a decree of destruction. That's not what shmad means. Shmad, again, comes from the root meaning to destroy. But the shmad is the decree that says that Jews have to violate their religion. Okay.
Okay. So he decrees shmad. He decrees.
You can just use the word shmad now.
Okay. Upon Israel to cancel altogether their belief, their religion.
You don't have to add in a word that's not there.
Okay.
To cancel.
Datam.
Or to void datam.
To void datam, or a mitzvah from among the mitzvot. The Jew should be killed and not transgress even one of the remaining mitzvot as that other mitzvot besides the three. Whether he is being threatened in front of a minyan or among a minyan, or whether he's being threatened among non-Jews.
Okay, so not threatened, but what? What's nanas? Being forced.
Forced, yes.
Right. Okay, so right. So when it's not shat shmad, then we say what? We said if it's shar mitzvot, if it's lahana'at atzmo shel hagoy, then you should be over and not be killed. If it's not lahanat atzmo shel goy, but rather the goy is trying to make the Jew transgress specifically with the intent that he wants them to transgress their Torah, then it depends. If it's in private, in other words, less than in public, then you should be over and not yareg. And if it's in public, in front of 10 men from Israel, what we say befarhesia. That's the definition of befarhesia. So in that case, you should be yareg v'al yavor. But then, when do I say all that? That's when it's shelo b'shat hashmad. But if it's b'shat hashmad, then even if it's in private, even if it's not in front of 10 people from Israel, then yehareg v'al yavor. Even on any mitzvah. Right. So as Paul said earlier, it's complicated. Yes.
What was that mean for the gzerot shel Adrianus Caesar על הברית מילה? Should all the Jews commit suicide? I don't understand.
Well,
Happily they didn't.
you know what? Maybe when we'll see how far we get. I think we might be able to get through this, all the Rambams I want to get to today. I'll show you an example from the Gemara in Sanhedrin. But yes, the Romans at various times made different gzerot against the Jews, including not wearing tefillin, not learning Torah. Brit Milah was already a gzerah from
Adrianus Caesar.
right, but from also from the time of the Greeks. That was one of the time of Antiochus. He made a gzera against Brit Milah. So certainly those were times of shmad, and yes. So Paul, I appreciate the fact that you're trying to bring this into real terms. The reason I'm hesitant to say about any of those is I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. The Rambam here is laying down the theoretical construct of how Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem works in principle. But like any kind of psak halacha, you have to take into account all circumstances. And so there may be other considerations beyond what are brought here in Hilchot Yisodei HaTorah, which will inform the posek as to how to paskin, inform the people as how they should act. But let's say, in theory, right? In theory, what would it mean? That if it was b'shat hashmad, and part of the shmad was that you are not allowed to circumcise your boys, so then you should be yareg v'al yavor. That is, that there you should go ahead and circumcise your boys. You might say, rather than to be killed. You could also make an argument that when do I say yareg v'al yavor is when you have to when you have to do a ma'aseh. But there I might say sheva al ta'aseh. There I might say kol zman that you didn't do the brit, so you have neither transgressed the shmad, and you're being mevatel a mitzvah taseh. If you're the father of a boy, so come the 8th day from the boy's birth, you have a mitzvah taseh to do the brit milah. If you put it every day that you put it off, you're being mivatel a mitzvah aseh. But you're not doing anything biyadayim. You're not doing anything actively. You're doing it passively. So maybe that's going to maybe that will inform us as to whether or not it comes under this rubric. So here you see the examples that the Rambam is giving us so far are things that one averot that you actively do, like bishul b'Shabbat. That's an action that you're being forced to do.
Couldn't, where the Brit Milah is concerned, couldn't we say that just as Brit Milah is actually forbidden after 8 days if it'll put the child in danger medically, so too, if you do it because the child be in danger because of authorities, there too would also be not only would it be permitted not to do it, but it actually be required not to do it under those circumstances, where it's not your own personal safety, but the safety of the child.
That's the quick answer is I may not say that. And so because it's very nice that you want to pontificate on this question, but
well, pontificating is an unfortunate verb here, but yes.
Yes, it's true.
And I hope hopefully not an appropriate one.
You heard the Pope, what he said yesterday or 2
about
days ago.
which statement? I heard a couple of things.
He said something that the soldiers in Gaza killed many children, something like this.
Yes, I think after 1800 years or so, Jews are not surprised at things that popes say. Nothing the only thing that a pope can say that will surprise us is something that's sympathetic to the Jews. That would surprise us.
He was a good friend of the rabbi of Buenos Aires.
Yes. Okay,
don't understand. Okay, that's not.
Let's not get into it. In any event, Michael Werner, what your argument may or may not hold water. It's just too complicated to get into now. We have to get into the way you phrased it. I would definitely take issue with, but I don't want to go down to that rabbit hole. But nonetheless, I would say the basic point that you're bringing up would be a question that that a posek would have to think about. In any event, okay, so if we were to make this into a flow chart, which I should have done, but you could make a flow chart from this Rambam, right? You could start off with this idea that there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, there's a Yisur of Chilul Hashem, and there's also this mitzvah of B'chai Bahem. Remember this idea of B'chai Bahem is always in the background, that ideally a person is supposed to live in order to do mitzvot. And we didn't delve into this at all, really. But you remember Rashi on our Gemara he introduces the idea to our sugya. He gets it from the sugya in Sanhedrin. And I'll just remind if I can. Oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to. There's something I can't bring it up. Hold on a second. My computer is freezing up, but this part of it is still working. So let's stay here for a minute. I'll try to come back to this idea of the Chai Bahem later. Okay, we're up to the Halakha Dalid. So Michael Schwartz, Kol Mi Shene'amar Bo.
Kol mi shene'amar bo ya'avor v'yo v'al yaharag v'neharag v'lo avar harei ze mitchayev b'nafsho. V'kol mi shene'amar bo yahareg v'al ya'avor v'neharag reg v'lo avar.
V'neharag, yeah.
V'neharag v'lo avar harei ze kadeshet Hashem. V'im haya be'esra b'Yisrael harei ze kadeshet Hashem b'rabim. Kedaniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, V'Chavirav, Ve'Elohem, Harugei Malchut, She'ein Ma'alal Al Ma'altam, V'Aleihem Na'amar, Ki Alecha Horgeinu Kol Hayom, Horagnu,
Ki Alecha Horagnu Kol Hayom. Shavnu Kitson Tivcha. Yeah.
וכי הלך הרגנו כל היום ונקשב כצום טבך, ועליהם נאמר, אספו לי חסידי קורתי וריתי על זבח.
Okay, we'll read that. Isfuli
חסידי
Chasidai
קורתי וריתי עלי זבח.
Ale Zabach.
עלי
Okay.
זבח.
I'm not going to go into the psukim here per se, but so now the Rambam is taking what we've learned so far and he's putting it back into the context of the mitzvot. So Michael Schwartz, so what does he say? Kol mi shenemar bo ya'avor v'al yehareg.
So all that was said about him, that he should transgress and not die, or that he should die and not transgress, he is obligated in his soul.
Wait. So let's say it a little more carefully. Kol mi shenemar bo, anyone about whom it is said, Ya'avor v'al yahareg. So now the Rambam is saying, I've laid out a number of different possibilities if somebody is nanas regarding mitzvot. And so in some cases, I've said somebody should be over rather than they should transgress rather than to be killed. In some places, I said you should be killed rather than transgress. So he's saying, let's look at the group of people about whom I said, Ya'avor va'al yehareg. Right? There's a whole group of people that about whom I said you should rather you should transgress than be killed. So about those people, Kol mi shenemar bo ya'avor va'al yehareg.
And they were killed or let themselves be killed rather than transgressing, they are obligated in their soul.
Okay, so the Rambam here again, he makes this very explicit. According to him, if you allow yourself to be killed in an instance that the Rambam said you should be over, according to the Rambam, you're mitchayev benafsho. It's not considered to be a midat chasidut. You're not considered to be like a chum. It's not a chumrah that you're allowed to do. If you do this chumrah of allowing yourself to be killed, you've actually violated the Torah by doing so, and you're mitchayev benafshecha. Continue. V'chol mi.
And that and all those that was said about him that they should be killed and not to transgress, and they in fact were killed and they didn't transgress. This is a Kiddush Hashem. This is a sanctifying the name. And if it was done among 10 Jews, then this is a sanctification of the name in public, like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, and like Azariah, and like Rabbi Akiva and his compatriots.
Very good. Continue. Ve'elohim.
And they were those that were killed by the kingship. That's not that I don't understand. She'ein ma'aleh al maltem. That
Right.
was not,
Ve'elohim harugei malchut. So these people that I just mentioned, they were harugei malchut. They were put to death by the
authorities, the king.
Authorities.
yeah. Let's say the king. It's another word I'm looking for. I can't think of it, but yes, we'll say the kingly authorities. She'ein ma'ala al ma'alatam. There is no ma'ala. There's no heightened level that is higher than this. In other words, this is the highest level of Kiddush Hashem. To allow you to have allow themselves to be put to death by the Malchut under these circumstances. That is, that like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, whom God saved, and Rabbi Akiva, whom God didn't save, right? But all of them were subject to being put to death by the Malchut. ועליהם נאמר כי עליך הורגנו כל היום, נחשבנו כצאן טבחה. ועליהם נאמר, אספו לי חסידיי כורתי בריתי עלי זבח. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into the psukim that he's quoting, but we understand that these things are very, very, this puts them at a very high level for their level of Kiddush Hashem. I want to see if I can show you something quickly. I'm looking at the sugya that the Rambam is bringing this from. But you know what? I'll prepare that for next time. I'll prepare a part of the sugya so you'll see it next time. Specifically about Rabbi Akiva, this famous story there that you might know. We'll leave it for next time. Okay, Michael Werner. V'chol mi shne'amar bo here.
So everyone about whom it is said.
I want you to read in Hebrew.
Oh, okay.
V'chol mi-
וכל מי שנאמר בו יהרג ואל יעבור, ועבר ולא נהרג, הרי זה מהלל את השם, ואם היה בעשרה מישראל, הרי הלל את השם ברבים. ובטל מצוות עשה, שהיה קידוש השם, שהיא או קידוש השם, ועבר על מצוות לא תעשה שהיא הילול השם. ואף על פי כן, מפני שעבר באונס, אין מלקין אותו, ואין צריך לומר שאין ממיתין אותו בית דין. אפילו הרג באונס שאין מלקין וממיתין, אבל אלא לעובר ברצונו בעדין בעדין, thank you. בעדין, right, among witnesses. והתראה. והתראה, thank you. שנאמר, ונותן מזרעו למולך.
Skip the first word, ונתתי. ושמתי.
ושמתי אני את פני.
את פניי.
את פניי באיש ההוא. ומפי המשוע למדו.
מפי
השמועה, thank you. למדו ההוא. לא אנוס ולא שוגג ולא muta.
Very good. Okay, so this is a long one. Let's go through it bit by bit. So the first, right, so the Rambam in the first part, he talks about, two things. Again, just to keep it in our head. So the first instance in Halacha Daled was somebody who was supposed to be over and not neharag, and he instead was neharag and not over, he's mitchayev b'nafsha. But somebody who's supposed to be yareg ve'al yavor and is neharag v'avar, right, v'lo avar, so then he's mikadesh Shem Hashem. If he does it b'farhesia, then he's mikadesh et Hashem b'rabim. So now we have sort of the flip side. V'kol mi shenemar bo yahareg ve'lo v'al yavor. So Michael, what does it say? You
So
can now you can.
Yes. So everyone about whom it is said to be killed and not to transgress, and about
Not-
whom it is
No. Ve. Yeah, go ahead.
and to transgress and to transgress and not to be killed.
Wait, stop. He's think of it like this. Kol mi shenemar be'yareg v'al yavor.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. I know what I'm doing. What it said.
Okay.
So everyone about whom it is said to be killed and not to transgress, and he does transgress and is not killed.
Right.
This is Hilul Hashem, desecration of the name.
Okay. So
Yeah.
actually, here, just to be medayek, harei zeh, through the zeh, he refers to the person. It's the
Yeah.
kol mi.
Okay.
This person is mechalel et Hashem. This
person
person has
is a desecrator of the name.
very good.
And if he was if he was among a minion, he is a desecrator of the name Berabim in public, and he cancels, negates,
Voids. Could also say voids.
He voids. Thank you. He voids, and if he voids, and if he voids a mitzvah, a positive.
Not if. Uvitel.
And he voids a positive mitzvah, that is Kiddush Hashem's sanctification of the name, and he transgresses a mitzvah, a negative mitzvah, that is desecration of the name. And even in this case, because he transgressed under duress, we do not give him lashes. And if, which I just lost my place. Okay, yes. Okay, yes, okay. And if we need, and if,
Not if, the aim.
and one does not need, and we do not need to say that that we do not kill him at the hands of the, we do not, he's not actually at the hands of the Beit Din.
Okay.
Even if he kills under duress, we do not give him lashes or execute him. Rather, if he transgresses under his own free will, among witnesses.
Not among, but
with witnesses.
And do you know what hatra is? Don't guess.
He's given a warning
Very good.
by the witnesses.
Okay. Very good.
Um,
Okay, well, actually stop before we get to the proof text. So can you say this in your own words?
So even so, if a person transgresses under duress, whether it's a positive mitzvah that is whose violation would be a desecration of the name, or a negative mitzvah whose transgression would be a desecration of the name. If he does these under duress, he is not liable to lashes or death penalty at the hands of the Beit Din. Rather, he's only liable to these to lashes or death penalty at the hands of the Beit Din if he does it under his own free will.
And
Under his own free will,
and
and in these cases, with a
demon hatra'ah.
Oh yeah, with witnesses and warning.
Okay, so the Rambam here is pointing out that the implications of being mechalel shem Hashem under these circumstances are essentially to be the subject of divine punishment, because these are not things that Beit Din has the authority to punish one for. The person was forced, so in that the person was forced, and we don't, and we he was forced, and the only way that Beit Din can either give him malkot, which, as you correctly translate, are lashes, but malkot are specifically lashes that are mandated by Torah law as opposed to rabbinic law, right? So the Torah, he's saying that the Torah doesn't mandate a punishment either of lashes, depending on the Aveira, or mitah, depending on the Aveira, because he didn't have a demon hatra'ah, but rather he was in a case where he was in a situation where he was forced. So even if he was forced, even if he was forced to do these things birabim, and he didn't behave the way that the halakha dictates, that is, maybe he was supposed to be killed rather than to violate these laws, right? He was supposed to be yareg v'al yavor, but Beit Din doesn't punish him. The implication is that God is going to punish him, but Beit Din doesn't punish him. And he says, right, Shenemar benotein mizaro l'molech. I learned this out from the person who gives their children, their seed to Molech, that God says, V'samti ani et panai ba'ishahu. God says, I'm going to pay attention to this person. Umipiha shmua lamdu, so we learn from tradition that when he says, what does it mean ba'ish hahu, that particular person who was ma'avir banav the molech, zaro the molech, hahu, God is going to mete out punishment to him. Lo anus, velo shogeg, velo muteh, but not a person who was forced or unconscious of the halachic implications of what he was doing, or who was making a mistake. And these categories, we're just going to leave them as translations now because they get a little more complicated. So let's finish this off. Paul, can you read Uma im avodah?
לא שוגג ולא מוטעה. ומה עם עבודה זרה, שהיא חמורה מן הכל, העובד אותה באונס אינו חייב כרת, ואין צריך לומר מיתת בית דין, קל וחומר לשאר מצוות האמורות בתורה. ובעריות הוא אומר, ולנערה לא תעשה דבר.
Okay, so
about
what is
the Avodah Zarah, which is even more worse
Stringent. Stringent.
Okay. Then everything else, the person who does Avodah Zarah, who is forced to do Avodah Zarah, does not לא חייב כרת.
Okay, well, he doesn't have a punishment of karet.
אינו חייב, it doesn't have to be punished by כרת, ואין צורך לומר מיתת בית דין, and he does not either to be put to death by a beit din.
Right. In other
Kal
words, right, it's a kal v'chomer, right? Because mitat beit din is a lesser punishment than karet. Karet is the higher punishment because it's a divine punishment. Right.
v'chomer. Kal v'chomer.
A
Kal v'chomer.
fortiori.
מה
It's
זה?
okay, kal v'chomer, all the more so.
All the more so, okay. For the rest of the mitzvot, which are mentioned in the Torah. בעריות הוא אומר, for sexual transgressions, he says, ולנערה לא תעשה דבר, and for the young girl, the girl, don't do anything. Don't
Right.
kill her. Yeah.
Right, she's not right
Don't punish
because
her. Don't punish her.
right. We saw the pasuk there in Dvarim that says at the end, "Nara lo taseh davar." In the case of the Nara who was raped basadeh,
Masadek.
right? Okay, so he's saying, he's just laying this out, right? So if we see by avodah zara, that is the most, it's the stringent is actually the best word here, but we'll have to just use in most cases it is, but I would use a different word here. In other words, it's the heaviest of these crimes. So, but what do we see? That if you transgressed avodah zarah ba'ones, in other words, that you chose to transgress rather than be put to death, right? So you did what I'm telling you you shouldn't have done. You should have been put to death and transgressed. But if you were oveyed, but you did it ba'ones, you did it under
By force.
force, right, by an outside force, then so what did I just tell you? You're not chayav karet. I don't even have to say you're not chayav mitat beitin because that's a lesser punishment. Then all the more so that the kal v'chomer goes back on avodah zarah. So avodah zarah is the chamur. It's the heaviest of all of these of this kind of mitzvah. So all the more so for any of the other mitzvot besides avodah zarah, l'sham mitzvot hamura b'Torah, you won't be chayav any punishment. In other words, the Rambam is set up here this idea that in the case where you were supposed to be neharag rather than transgress, but you transgressed instead of being put to death. He's saying that's what you should have done, but there's actually no punishment for you. There is no punishment. It's getting late. I am in any event. I was going to skip halacha hey, which you're all welcome to read, but it gets into another question, which is the question of here. I'll just say it quickly. This is from a Mishnah in Trumot, right? That said that if a bunch of goyim came up to women and they said, "Give us one of you," v'nitameot, in other words, give us one of you for us to rape, or if not, we'll rape all of you. Then the din is that they're not supposed to give over anybody and allow themselves to be raped rather than give over anybody. This also breaks down into different cases, and it's a little bit complicated, but you see why it's how it's related. In halacha vav, kinyan shamru ba'anasin kachamru b'chalaim. This is where we're going to pick up next time. The same way that we talked about this with people who try to force other people, we say similarly about people who are sick. And this is where the Rambam will get into questions of sakanat nefashot and when you're over and not over in order to heal somebody. And I think we'll try to do this. Not all of them. I'll try to prepare some of them in between. But Okay, this is a good session. You start to see how the Rambam puts these together, but again, I want to emphasize the Rambam is putting these together based on sugyot, primarily the sugya in Sanhedrin, of which we saw a little bit in our sugya in Masechet Yoma. But because everybody was interested, I thought it would be worth taking a look to see. And again, not everybody agrees with all the pratim here of the Rambam, but it's maybe the most approachable text for us to look at. Let's stop here. Any last questions or comments?
Yes, practically this doesn't work because you wouldn't imagine that a Jew knows the whole flow chart and now he has to decide in 5 seconds what to do, and then he goes to the flow chart and says, "Oh, I don't have to be killed, or I should be killed, or something like this." It's not going to work in the practical circumstances.
Okay, so well, I'll say two things. One,
it's the same question I asked before. In
no, but
another way.
I'll point out two things. So one of them is not in every case does the person have to make a decision in 5 seconds, right? Because we saw in the Gemara, the case came, right?
Circumstances, yes.
That he was given a threat. So maybe he said, like, you have 24 hours to kill Plony, or I'm going to kill you. But I think,
and then he goes to the Rav to ask the question.
Yes, and he went and he asked Rabbah, what should I do? And so Rabbah paskined for him. And as I said, lo aleinu, but these shilas just like this were asked, unfortunately, quite a lot as the Holocaust was actually happening. People who had access to the Rabbanim, who were devout, they wanted piskei dinim. They wanted to know what the halacha was. And in many, many, many instances, they were able to ask people who were well versed. And I'll try to remember this for next time. I'll show you at least the book and who wrote them. I really can't remember his name now, and it's tragic on my part. This was a person who was a phenomenal Talmid Chacham, and he didn't have access to Sfarim, but he had a phenomenal recall of halachic literature, and people were asking him questions in real time. He was doing, tshuvot that nobody should ever have to confront.
Is this? Are you thinking of Piers Netzner by any chance? Or
No.
Okay.
No. No, he wasn't, and he didn't paskin. I don't know that. I know a little bit about him because of our mutual friend and so forth, but no, it's somebody else. In any event, but the other thing though I want to say is, Paul, nonetheless, I think you make a good point, but I think that first of all, the Rambam is here, he is writing a halachic tract. So he has to lay out what the halacha is as best he can. I think one of the things that we get from that, even if a typical Jew may not learn the Rambam to this level, didn't learn the Sugyot in Sanhedrin and so forth, nonetheless, this gives you some basis, it gives you some direction. And I think even relatively uneducated Jews have some basic idea of the way these halachot work. Maybe, again, not in this intricate detail, and I agree with you. But that's not the way halacha works. And halacha works because you have to lay out the system, and then we do it as best we can. Maybe this is one of the reasons that the Rambam emphasizes that if a person was over v'lo neharag in a case where he should have been neharag v'lo over, he's nonetheless anus, so he will not be punished. But by doing so, it'll turn out b'diavad that, let's say, he wasn't mikadesh Shem Hashem, so he's bitel the mitzvah taseh of kiddush Hashem, but he was bitel be'ones. and below Yodea, right? The Rambam gives him a sympathetic place. But a lot of
in
go
the
ahead.
end, you should save your life. B'chai b'hem. Whatever happens.
No, but so the Rambam says that's not true, right? Because there are cases where you're supposed to sacrifice your life. You're allowed. You're
Yes,
supposed.
but even in those cases, you don't have karet.
Yes, but you're mitchayev b'nafsho. The Rambam hasn't explained exactly what that means. So
But
the
you
point,
live.
you live, but is
Okay.
it gets it right. We're getting into like deeper questions. Maybe we should say something about that, and then I'll stop. So I emphasized before that the Rambam introduces Kiddush Hashem, Chilul Hashem, and then B'chai Bahem. So B'chai Bahem is always a consideration in the back. I think that we as Jews, we would like to, that we believe that God is going to judge us both, is going to judge us on our actions, and we will act, hopefully, as best we can under whatever circumstances. So if we're Talmidei Chachamim and we can think about these things on a deeper level, we'll think about them on this deeper level. If not, we have some basic idea now from the Rambam about the way these things go. And that's, I think, more than that, we can't ask. But I think I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Paul, you ask a good question, because the question that you're asking is, what's the bridge between the theoretical and the practical? How does this work in practice? And as I said, the Rambam himself in practice wasn't necessarily moreh halacha. He didn't necessarily paskin that people should behave in precisely the way that is laid out here in Hilchot Yisodei Torah. Again, because when you come to paskin halacha l'maaseh, you have to see a broader picture. But I think what this serves as a basis for not just a halachic approach, but a philosophical attitude toward the way we see ourselves vis-a-vis these issues. More than that, I think I can't say. So, Chag Sameach to all of you.
Chag
Thank you.
Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Sameach.
And
I see you have daylight behind you, so it means that we're on the same continent.
that's right.
Oh, he
He and I.
Washington. It looks like Washington where you are.
Yes, but Michael's also in the United States.
Oh.
I will say next
That reason
week.
he has got this casket.
Yeah, Michael, you don't usually wear a hat to shear, so are you covering up in front of the goyim? I mean, makorepo. Listen, next week is January 1st. I may not give shear next week. I will let you know because I may be in transit. But for now, let's assume that I will give shiur, but unless you hear from me otherwise.
All right. Good night.
All right, can
Chag
kol tuv.
Sameach.
Kol tuv. Bye-bye. Chag Sameach.
Bye.
Bye-bye.